I am an American and I choose to fight for it. There are so many people out in the streets right now fighting for equality, fighting for change. And I gotta tell you, I am going to be part of that. I have been part of that, and I will vote. I will be voting for Biden because he will help bring us together as a nation. Positive social change does not come about by the hard efforts of politicians. It comes about by us working together. And I encourage all of you who are right now out on the streets doing what you need to do to bring about social change to vote.
Count the votes. That's called functioning democracy. So don't let anyone tell you just because it's not done on November 3rd, that means nothing, right? So we have to stay focused on the results and don't fall into the trap of saying that it's contest. We have to be more vigilant than that. Third thing, for those of you saying the Biden-Harris ticket is not progressive enough for me, I need some time. I'm kind of over you too, because what else do you need to see? Right? Again, like democracy is on the ballot. The Republican Senate has done their job to protect this guy. Like they have done nothing against nothing for the HEROES Act or anything. Like Nancy Pelosi has done her best, and Mnuchin and Meadows and McConnell have done the worst. So for those of you saying Biden and Harris aren't progressive enough for you, you need to get over that, because like, what else do you need to see? And we need to move. And the last thing I'll say about that is this: we need to move beyond seeing the presidency as a magic wand to fix our problems and see it as an organizing tool that we as a movement can work with and against to create the world that we want to see. So enough of the popularity contest. It is a functioning tool of the people to enact policy change. That's what I want us to see. Lastly, can you tell I was a former civics teacher? Like, we also must get focused. We can't be so focused on removing Donald Trump that we ignore the necessity of taking back the Senate and expanding the House majority, which leads us to where we're headed. You know, our government, especially given the absurdity demonstrated by the Republican Party during the RNC, requires us to have an expanded Democratic majority in the House, a Democratic majority in the Senate, and Democratic control of the White House in order to create the world that we're hoping for, right? So we are less than 60 days out from November 3rd. And I don't mention that to make you alarmed and anxious. Yoga teachers don't do that. This is a teaching moment. So we must be prepared to either vote by mail, vote early, vote at the polls. You know, Move On and our allies across the movement are doing our best to make sure we have the most up-to-date and accurate information. You can find that on moveon.org/mobilize-to-win. So without further delay, it's my honor to introduce my guest today, Dana Balter. She's running for Congress in New York's 24th because she believes that working families in Central and Western New York deserve a representative who will fight for them. In Congress, Dana will work to guarantee quality, affordable health care for every person, to build a fair economy that works for everyone, and get big money out of politics. Don't we need that? So that power rests with average people, not special interests. Dana knows the importance of making sure everyone in society has a fair shot to success, because from a young age, she's been an advocate for her brother who has cognitive disabilities, and she's made sure that he had the resources and opportunities to thrive. Dana's experiences moving through the world by her brother's side led to a career in disability services, where she began as a teacher and later became the director of education for a disability services nonprofit. She wanted to understand how to dismantle systemic barriers that stood in the way of families that she worked with. So she returned to school to get a degree in public administration. She later went on to teach at the university level, most recently teaching public policy and citizenship, hooray, at Syracuse University's Maxwell School of Citizenship and Public Affairs. In 2018, Dana ran an unprecedented grassroots campaign in New York's 24th, breaking fundraising records and coming closer to defeating Rep. John Katko than anyone has ever done before. This cycle is a rematch with Rep. Katko, who has endorsed Donald Trump. And, you know, New York 24 is rated one of the top 3 most vulnerable Republican House seats by the Washington Post and Roll Call. And the latest polling shows Dana in a very strong position. But we're not here to talk about polls. We're here to talk about big ideas and mobilization. Dana Balter, welcome to the Big Ideas Move On Politics and Flows. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me, Reggie. It's a pleasure to be here talking with you today.
Absolutely. So let's begin at the beginning. Tell me about how the campaign's going. What's the latest?
The campaign is going very well. We are obviously facing the same challenges that campaigns all across the country are facing. Campaigning in the era of COVID is different and much more constrained. The things that I like the most about being a candidate are the opportunities to get out and meet people all across the district and see them face to face and hear their stories and talk to them about the things that matter to them. And we are unfortunately very limited in our ability to do that right now. I'm very grateful for technological tools like we're using right now, because that's enabled us to stay connected. It's also enabled us to reach new people who might not be able to come out to a political event on a Tuesday night, but can join when we come to their living room. So that has been good. But overall, what we're feeling here on the ground in the 24th district is an overwhelming sense of urgency. Voters all across the district, people of all political stripes, are aching for leadership, for somebody to step up and fight for them, to challenge the powerful special interests that dominate our political conversation right now, and to fight for the things that matter to everyday folks. Things like economic opportunity and fairness, so that we have a tax system that prioritizes the needs of working families instead of corporations. Things like access to healthcare. We are in the middle of a public health crisis that is worse than anything we've seen in a century. And we have watched it decimate communities, disproportionately decimate Black and Brown communities. And we are living in a country where, despite being the richest country in the history of the world, millions and millions and millions of us don't have access to healthcare. the pandemic didn't create that situation, but it highlights the urgency of fixing that situation. And so, you know, everywhere that I go and every person that I talk to, whether it's on the phone or via Zoom, I am hearing the same thing, is we need leadership. We need someone to fight for us. We need someone to lead us out of this crisis. And Donald Trump is not getting it done. I mean, that doesn't come as a surprise to anybody on this call, I'm sure. We all knew before he was elected that he couldn't do this job, which is why we didn't vote for him. But his incompetence, his cruelty, and his repeated, concentrated efforts to undermine our very democracy have put us in greater danger than I think most people understood was possible in this country. And I'm running against a man in this district who endorses Trump for 2020, who, when he made that endorsement, actually had the audacity to say to us, we're better off as a country than we were 3 years ago. So I'm endorsing this man for election. I don't know what country my opponent is living in, but nobody that I know is better off than they were 3 years ago. And our country and our democracy certainly is not. So we're eager here as we head into the home stretch. We've got just under 8 weeks to go, and we're really eager to finish the job, flip the seat, and get good representation, not only for our district, but to do our part for the country, to try and put the pieces that Donald Trump has left us in back together.
Yeah, Dana, thank you for that answer, and thank you for your passion. We see that. Tell me a little bit more about New York's 24th district, right? So, like, tell me about the demographics, urban, rural. So tell me a little bit more about the district.
Sure. This is a really interesting place. So this is the central and western New York region. The population center is the city of Syracuse, which has about 144,000 people in it. We then, of course, have a couple of smaller cities. We are home to Auburn, New York, which is the home of Harriet Tubman. And we are the home of a huge swath of agricultural land. About half of our district is rural. Farming is incredibly important here. And then, of course, we have suburbs around our cities. So we really run the gamut in terms of geographies. We also run the gamut in terms of political ideology. You travel our district and you will find people at the far right of the spectrum who are avowed Trump supporters, who claim that their number one issue, the only issue that they care about, is the Second Amendment. And you will see people at the complete opposite end of the political spectrum who are going on 40 years of civil demonstrations in support of environmental rights and social justice. In fact, Syracuse is home to the country's oldest peace and social justice organization called the Syracuse Peace Council. So we really have, in terms of politics, tremendous diversity in this district, which makes it a very interesting place to run and a difficult place, I think, to represent. That all averages out to make us one of the swingiest swing districts in the country. So overall, we're considered a moderate district, but that's not because we are filled with people who hold moderate political views. It's because we're filled with people from all across the spectrum. And some of the things that I really love about it here, I recognize that I'm biased, and those of you listening from other parts of the country, please don't take offense. We are perhaps the most beautiful place in the lower 48 states. We have the Finger Lakes here. If you have not been, please come and visit us. It is stunning. We've been voted 2 years in a row now the best wine region in the country. So if you're a wine drinker, come and do our wine trails. Our parks and forests are just spectacular. And we take our natural resources very seriously and the obligation to protect them very seriously, which makes good climate policy and environmental justice policy a top priority for people here. I mentioned that Auburn is Harriet Tubman's home. one of the things that I really love about this region is our history of fighting for social justice. This region of New York was at the forefront of every major social justice movement in this country, from abolition to women's rights and suffrage to environmental justice. We are also home to the oldest living democracy in the world, with the Onondaga Nation, who contributed greatly to the drafting of our own constitution in this country. So this place is so full of history, and really important history. The strong movements in this country to make us a more perfect union. And what is so special to me about being a political candidate here in Central and Western New York is that we're engaged in our modern day fights for justice. And we are tapping into that tradition and that heritage. And it imbues everything that we are doing with this sense of history and connection to generations and generations that have come before and done the work. And to me, it's very special that we have built a movement here for change that's connected to that and carrying on that tradition in the best way.
As a student of history, as someone who speaks from the voice that you just shared, I'm inspired, right? So to root your candidacy in the generational struggle of abolition, of women's rights, of all civil justice is a beautiful legacy to draw upon, but also a beautiful thing to like move forward with. Complete non sequitur. Someone in the chat was like, between like you were talking about the beauty of your region. It said better than the Hudson Valley ? Exclamation point. So
well,
I don't know what to make of that.
Listen, I understand why those of you who are from the Hudson Valley love the Hudson Valley. It's beautiful. I've spent lots of time there, but I gotta say, Central and Western New York is where it's at. And I think really what puts us over the top is the lakes. I grew up spending summers on the Finger Lakes, and there is something magical about being connected to that water, the purity of it, the essence of life of it. It is part of what we build community around here. So family memories and family history are tied up in it. So, you know, all due respect to the Hudson Valley, I gotta say we win.
Right. I love that. And the chat also said they go. Ann Graham goes to the Hudson Valley for vacation, but now she thinks she should go to your area. So you
definitely should come on up. I'll give you a tour personally.
Right on.
It's an amazing place.
Let's talk about the coronavirus and the post office as it affects your district, right? So like, given the state of affairs, how is the meddling of the president with the post office and the lack of a response by the president to the coronavirus affecting New York 24?
Yeah, so this is I'm sorry to be rolling my eyes. This is a source of great frustration to me. I can't believe that we are having this conversation in the United States of America, that we have to talk about protecting and defending the Postal Service, right. That's what we've come to. And I would say meddling, you describe it as meddling. I think that is an often used but very benign word that makes me think of my grandmother interfering in my social life, as opposed to the president of the country behaving like an authoritarian dictator and trying to dismantle our democracy, which is not a benign activity, right? And I think it's really important to remember when we're talking about the post office and any number of other things that Donald Trump is doing on a regular basis, that he's not a doddering old fool who is accidentally wandering into these messes. These are intentional choices on his part. Yep. And that is dangerous. They are threats to our way of life, to our political system, to our freedoms. And we have to, I think we have to respond and treat them as such. So part of that is a congressional response, right? And making sure that the post office is funded, and conducting oversight to deal with whatever DeJoy is doing and has done that shouldn't be happening, right? Part of it is tackling it in the courts, and there are court cases all across the country to ensure that people's voting access and voting rights are being respected and upheld, and that's really important. Part of it is us raising our voices. You mentioned this earlier, the idea that the presidency isn't a solution. It's really a tool for us, right? All of government is that. It is one of the tools we have in our toolbox to create the society we want. And we are only successful if we're active in it. I'm really proud of the folks in my district. They stood up and held demonstrations in support of the post office and fought back and insisted that our representative vote in support of that emergency funding. And we have seen delays. I mean, I've talked to postal workers who are telling me about the delays that are being intentionally created in their work. And I talk to lots of folks who are frustrated. A birthday card comes 3 weeks late. That's annoying. But when your life-sustaining medication comes 3 weeks late, that's not an annoyance. That's a matter of life and death. And we have elderly folks and people with disabilities and veterans in every part of this district who depend on mail service for their life-sustaining medications. And, that's before we even get to the issue of mail-in ballots and the ability to have a free and fair election. So, it's a huge problem. We definitely are seeing the effects of it here on the ground. I'm proud of our district for being part of the fight back. And, as usual, disappointed in our representative for not speaking up about it.
Right. And thank you for that. And I just want to say, I love the way that you shifted, because I'm a fan of words, right? And I'm very particular with my words as a writer, and also as someone who I give a lot of speeches and talks, as Dharma talks, as a teacher, and all the things. So I appreciate the reframing that you offered of it not being meddling, right? Willful destruction is not meddling. Mm-hmm. Right. So I appreciate that frame. And I think that those of you who are watching now and who are moving forward, that's what's happening, right? It's not meddling. It's willful destruction for the purpose of staying in power, which is against everything that we call a democracy. So it's not, and that goes to the false equivalency piece that I was talking about earlier, where the news will say it's meddling. Nah, homie, like you're trying to destroy and in service to your aims. And that's not who this nation is, right? That's not what we do.
Well, it's not who we want to be. If we don't step up, we will become that, right? And that's why it is so dangerous when people like my opponent choose to not speak up about what's happening, because the lessons of history tell us for millennia that the way anti-democratic, the way that authoritarian rulers come into power is not, they are not able to take power solely because of the actions that they undertake. They are able to take power because the people who have the power to stop them don't. And silence is their greatest weapon. It is an enabling condition, and it matters when a wannabe authoritarian leader like Donald Trump says the press is the enemy of the people, or says those judges are unqualified, or says that the co-equal branch of government, the legislature, doesn't know what it's doing and is corrupt. All of that is intentionally undermining functioning, healthy democracy. And every time something like that is said, or every time an action is taken, it has to be identified, it has to be called out, it has to be fought back against. That is the only way that we can get the march from where we are now to a complete authoritarian state. We can't let that happen. And it's up to each one of us, and it's up to us to demand from our elected officials that they step up and call it out. That is one of the main reasons why I am running for this office, because my representative refuses steadfastly to speak about these things. I don't have time for that. There is too much on the line.
Yeah, I love everything that you just said. And, you know, I want to give you an opportunity to, so the name of this forum is called the Big Ideas Forum. So what is something that upon election you hope to, what big ideas do you hope to work on in Congress that's representative of your district, but also of your values?
There are a lot. I'm never good at the pick one question. So I think because of the coronavirus crisis that we're in, healthcare and economics are going to have to be the major focus of everything we do in Congress for a number of years now, because recovery from this, I mean, we still don't have the virus spread under control because Trump refuses to address it, right? So everything is going to have to be focused there. For me, those are two of the three main issues in my platform anyway. They are primary reasons why I want to work in Congress, so that dovetails very nicely with the urgency of the moment. And I think that we're going to be able to push forward on a lot of progress in getting people access to healthcare and restructuring the rules of the economy so that it treats people fairly. I believe that out of the shared experience of this coronavirus crisis, we are going to be able to build the political coalitions necessary to move that agenda forward. This is an opportunity to do that we have not seen in a long time, and hopefully will not see again for a very long time. So we need to take advantage of this opportunity. My top legislative priority, coronavirus aside, is addressing money in politics. And that is as part of a larger democracy reform picture. I've always agreed with people who said that that was important, but until I became a candidate for federal office, I did not understand the depth and magnitude of this problem and how truly controlling of our entire political system it is. And I became convinced after, 6 months or so of being a candidate, that it has to be the top legislative priority, because if we don't fix this problem, we're never going to make progress on environmental policy and gun policy and economic policy, because the already powerful in this country have far too much influence in policymaking. Yeah. And the way we change that is by breaking the connection between money and politics. And ultimately, that requires overturning the Citizens United decision with a constitutional amendment. That's something that I hope everybody who's on this call is doing what they can to advance. But until that happens, we've got to do a lot legislatively with small dollar matching and with disclosure requirements and everything we can to make the system fairer and put more power in the hands of everyday folks. And those democracy reforms extend beyond money and politics, right? All the stuff that was in HR 1, expanding the franchise and protecting voting rights, ethics reform for Congress and for the executive branch, getting rid of gerrymandering, right? All of these things are critically important to reinvigorating the health of our democracy. And I think will allow us a functioning framework to then make the kind of progress that will build a society of shared prosperity and security for everybody. One extension of that is a personal passion project of mine is civic education. Mm-hmm. And I believe very strongly that the federal government needs to play a much bigger role in public education in this country. I think that along with national security, public education is one of the most important responsibilities of a government to its citizens. And we are not doing enough for our kids and for our country. And we could talk about education policy for hours and the things that we need to do to it. But one thing that I don't think gets a lot of attention that I want to work on is a national civics education initiative. we cannot expect voters in this country to be good stewards of our democracy if we don't teach people what democracy is and what your responsibility as a member of a democracy is, and how you can exercise your power and what the tools at your disposal are to shape our democracy. Right? That's the whole point, is that it's ours, right? We make it up, we own it, we're members, we're the bosses, we're all the parts of it. And that gives us tremendous power. It also gives us tremendous obligation to each other and to our society. And I think we have really failed as a country in providing adequate education about how to be a powerful, influential, present member of a democracy. And when I talk about civics education, I'm not talking about a 6-month elective in junior year of high school. I'm talking about something that is integrated into curriculum from the moment you enter school in what will hopefully be universal pre-K for 3 and 4-year-olds, all the way through high school graduation. That it is part of everything we do. It's part of our math curriculum. It's part of our science curriculum. It's part of our social studies curriculum. That teaching civic skills, not how many senators sit in the Senate. Sure, I want you to know that. But that's not what really matters. What really matters is that you understand how to engage in deliberative dialogue and group problem solving. That you have good media literacy skills, so you can tell truth from fiction in media. That you have the ability to sit down with somebody that you disagree with and have a productive conversation so that we can get somewhere, right? Even if we don't agree with each other. Those are the kinds of civic skills that I'm talking about, and we need to start building them in our toddlers. And it is in the vital interest of our country that we provide that education.
The chat box loves, there's a great interview from Bad Bunny, loves that. And as a former civics teacher, like everything that you said is just music to my ears, because we need to remember, and this is what I tell people all the time, it's not like I vote and then whatever. No, you vote because you are a shareholder in this. And you want, if you want to use a capitalistic framework, it's very similar, right? Like as a shareholder in this democracy, like I get to speak out if you're not performing and I'm not getting the return on my investment. That's what these, that's what money in politics is. They're getting a return on that investment. So we need to like break that cycle. So we, the people who are custodians of this is ours,
right?
Can have our share be represented. And that doesn't happen because we've been like undermined we've been undersold the value of our power.
Mm-hmm. And intentionally, right? Because that's part of the toolkit of keeping those in power, right? That's the whole thing about, oh, my vote doesn't matter. If your vote didn't matter, they wouldn't be working so hard to take it away from you, right? Because it's not just your vote, it's also your neighbor's vote and your neighbor's vote. And what we have to exert our power is not only everything that we as individuals bring, but our numbers. And that, again, look to history, right? Every major change has come with massive movements of social pressure. That's where we have the power. And we're watching it happen in the country now, right? We've been mobilized over these last few years under Donald Trump in a way that we haven't really been since the 60s in this country. That's sort of his hidden gift, I think, that he's given us, is a reinvigoration of civic engagement. I just want to make sure that we keep it once he's gone. What I don't want to see happen is that when the immediate threat that Donald Trump poses is gone next January, when we swear in Joe Biden on January 20th, 2021, it's going to be the best day of my life. When we do that, yes, we can all take a big sigh of relief and maybe a little bit of a vacation, because this has been an exhausting 4 years and everybody needs it, but it's got to be a short vacation, because that's when the real work is going to start. We can't go back to the way things were before Trump. Otherwise, we're going to end up back here again. We have to make things better than they were. And that's where all of us working together comes in.
Absolutely. For those of you who want to get 3 friends involved in this, so Move On is working in coalition with Vote Tripling and other organizations. You can text "We Got Us" to 668-366 to get involved in Vote Tripling. So what that is I did that this weekend. I have a text chain with my cousins, and was just like, so are you registered to vote and what's your plan? No response is not appropriate, right? And so they can't shake me, right? So they responded. So that's 5 people, but they all have households and those sorts of things. So when we make this part of our civic culture, we talk about it, we encourage other people to do it. It completely shifts our notion of responsibility, but also our notion of engagement. So Dana, I know that we're coming up close to your time. I've got several things that I always do here. One, as a gift to you, is place your hands together, clasp the fingers, and make wrist circles, please. This is a yoga move that I use all the time for all texting and typing that I do.
Mm-hmm.
It re-engages the fingers. So the fingers are meant to go out like this, not be stuck like this all day.
Right.
Right, so take those wrist circles in the other direction. Because I saw you typing furiously while I was rushing to get my mic set up. So I'll give you 30 seconds of this, right? You can press your fingers out like this. Take them overhead to get in the shoulders or whatever. So what that does is if you're like this all day, it's 2 birds with 1 piece of bread, right? So you're stretching the fingers and opening the shoulders.
Mm-hmm.
So if you ever find a break between Zoom calls and you need to get the wrist work or fingers done, I just gave you some baby yoga tips.
Wonderful.
That is therapy for the wrist because, we need that. Like, wrists are essential personnel these days. So wanted to share that with you. And,
Great.
go ahead.
I have a sort of an image of a new animated series for you because you said baby yoga.
Yeah.
And that, of course, puts me in mind of Baby Yoda from Mandalorian. And it seems to me like you might be able to do something there to spread these practices.
I love everything about what you just said. So mostly that you just made me cry while laughing. So I appreciate that.
And I revealed myself as a Star Wars geek for all the world.
Okay.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. Right. Yeah. So all my colleagues are laughing. I got voices and jokes for days. Y'all don't even know. Dana, thank you for bringing that out. So in conclusion, where can people find out more about your campaign? How can we support you? And tell us what gives you hope in this moment. You're up.
Okay, great. If you would like to get involved, the campaign website is electdanabalter.com. Balter is B as in boy, ALT as in Thomas, ER. And on the website, you can find out information about the race. You can find out information about my story and the issues that we're talking about here. You can sign up to volunteer, which we desperately need. Every voter outreach is all remote now because we can't knock on doors. So no matter where in the country you are, you can join our phone banking efforts and help us reach voters. We also need donors always, and you can make donations on the website. Encourage friends to donate until we get money out of the system. We need the money to win the races. So support us if you can. What gives me hope, honestly, is conversations like this. It's knowing that there are people watching from all over the country who care just as much as I do about all of the things that we talked about, who are engaged because they want to protect our democracy, they want it to be healthy and strong, who believe in fairness, who share my commitment to the ideas of dignity, access, and opportunity for every person. And I know that there are enough of us to make that a reality for everybody in this country. I know that we are going to win this fight. We are going to beat Donald Trump in November. We are going to take the Senate. We are going to expand our majority in the House. We are going to win in state houses all over the country and down to school board races and town council races, because the country has woken up to the urgency of the fight. And I wish that we didn't need to have this kind of sort of confrontation to get us to pay attention. But now that we are paying attention, I feel this connection and sense of community with people all over the country that in my lifetime I have never experienced. And I know without a doubt that we are going to not only survive Trump, but that as a country, we are going to come out of this stronger and ready to push forward an agenda of progress that is equitable and just and shared, so that everybody gets to participate, which is what we tell ourselves the United States of America is about. This is an inflection point in our history where we get to stand up and declare with one voice that we demand that this country fulfill that promise. And I, for one, am incredibly excited to be part of that movement. And because all of you are here, and because thousands like you who are not here are doing this in other Zoom rooms, I know that we're going to make it. That's what gives me hope.
I normally don't end like this, but how in the world can I say anything after that rousing close and rendition? So Dana, thank you for coming. Thank you, Rosa, for making this happen. Like, shout out to all staff. Like, none of this stuff just happened. So Rosa, thank you. We believe as you do, Dana, you're doing amazing work. So keep it up. We'll move on, support you fully, and we will continue to do so. And we'll do this. So y'all, we're gonna end right here. So Dana, thank you for your time. ElectDanaBalter.com is how you get involved. Politics and Flows, Big Ideas, episode 6, over and out.
This election isn't just about defeating Donald Trump or Mike Pence. It's about building this country back better. And that's exactly what Joe and I will do. We'll create millions of jobs and fight climate change through a clean energy revolution. Bring back critical supply chains so the future is made in America. Build on the Affordable Care Act so everyone has the peace of mind that comes with health insurance. And finally, offer caregivers the dignity, the respect, and the pay they deserve. Will protect a woman's right to make her own decisions about her own body, root out systemic racism in our justice system, and pass a new Voting Rights Act, a John Lewis Voting Rights Act.